This is where I was born and raised. It was here where I was given a chance at life, being conceived after my mother was violated at the age of 16. This is where I received my education and learned with hard work, discipline, and courage anything was possible. But things have changed. This is not the Oklahoma I remember. Over the last several years, I've seen fear, chaos, and division tear this nation apart through the efforts of communists and the apathy of Republicans in name only, who are either incapable or unwilling to do whatever it takes to protect our God-given rights. Election fraud, open borders, riots, unvetted Afghan refugees, and 300,000 plus acres of land sold to Chinese nationals has made Oklahoma the hub for human trafficking, the indoctrination of our children in critical race theory, sexual immorality, and abortion on demand. And finally, the unconstitutional and illegal vaccine mandate, leaving hundreds of thousands of our legal and law-abiding citizens jobless. Enough is enough, and the political theater must stop. We must have a governor who's willing to lead legislators and Oklahomans to fight back against this tyranny and aggressively address these issues head-on. As the next governor of the state of Oklahoma, I will, in the first 100 days, initiate a forensic audit with canvases to ensure election integrity, secure Oklahoma's borders, stop all state funding to school districts who train or teach CRT to faculty, staff, or students, and end all abortions. Oklahoma, let's put our faith back in God, believe that nothing is impossible, and make Oklahoma free again. Oklahoma is my home. This is where I was born and raised. It was here where I was given a chance at life, being conceived after my mother was violated at the age of 16. This is where I received my education and learned with hard work, discipline, and courage anything was possible. But things have changed. This is not the Oklahoma I remember. Over the last several years, I've seen fear, chaos, and division tear this nation apart through the efforts of communists and the apathy of Republicans in name only, who are either or unwilling to do whatever it takes to protect our God-given rights. Election fraud, open borders, riots, unvetted Afghan refugees, and 300,000 plus acres of land sold to Chinese nationals has made Oklahoma the hub for human trafficking, the indoctrination of our children in critical race theory, sexual immorality, and abortion on demand. And finally, the unconstitutional and illegal vaccine mandate, leaving hundreds of thousands of our legal and law-abiding citizens jobless. Enough is enough, and the political theater must stop. We must have a governor who's willing to lead legislators and Oklahomans to fight back against this tyranny and aggressively address these issues head-on. As the next governor of the state of Oklahoma, I will, in the first 100 days, initiate a forensic audit with canvases to ensure election integrity, secure Oklahoma's borders, stop all state funding to school districts who train or teach CRT to faculty, staff, or students, and end all abortions. Oklahoma, let's put our faith back in God, believe that nothing is impossible, and make Oklahoma free again. Oklahoma is my home. This is where I was born and raised. It was here where I was given a chance at life, being conceived after my mother was violated at the age of 16. This is where I received my education and learned with hard work, discipline, and courage anything was possible. But things have changed. This is not the Oklahoma I remember. Over the last several years, I've seen fear, chaos, and division tear this nation apart through the efforts of communists and the apathy of Republicans in name only, who are either incapable or unwilling to do whatever it takes to protect our God-given rights. Election fraud, open borders, riots, unvetted Afghan refugees, and 300,000 plus acres of land sold to Chinese nationals has made Oklahoma the hub for human trafficking, the indoctrination of our children in critical race theory, sexual immorality, and abortion on demand. And finally, the unconstitutional and illegal vaccine mandate, leaving hundreds of thousands of our legal and law-abiding citizens jobless. Enough is enough, and the political theater must stop. We must have a governor who's willing to lead legislators and Oklahomans to fight back against this tyranny and aggressively address these issues head-on. As the next governor of the state of Oklahoma, I will, in the first 100 days, initiate a forensic audit with canvases to ensure election integrity, secure Oklahoma's borders, stop all state funding to school districts who train or teach CRT to faculty, staff, or students, and end all abortions. Oklahoma, let's put our faith back in God, believe that nothing is impossible, and make Oklahoma free again. Oklahoma is my home. Town Hall. I'm your host, Dr. Mark Sherwood. As you know, 2022 gubernatorial candidate for the state of Oklahoma. So glad you could join us tonight. Thank you for being with us. We do these virtual town halls to bring people in from all over the country so that we can spread the message of hope to this crazy world we live in. Folks, we're on the edge of tyranny, as you know. Tyranny is abounding right now in this country, and we, the people, have to step up. Tyranny is when the people fear the government. However, what we've got to create is this thing called freedom. Freedom is when the government fears the people. The greatest way you can get government to fear you is raise your voice and lift your actions. Get involved in the game. We've been involved for the last 10 months. I was telling our guests before coming live that it's been 10 months of a battle, of a war. And to that end, I think that we've had maybe 2 nights off of the last maybe 6 months. And that is not exaggerating. My wife and I have driven over 10,000 miles across this state in the last 2 months. And I believe my wife's driven probably 9,500 of those. So she's a trooper. My wife, Michelle, I look at her as not just my wife, but look, she's more than just my spare rib. She's my best friend. She's my pal. I like to say she's my perfectly glazed, braised, and smoking hot prime rib there. So that's my wife, and I tell you what, I honor her in that. And as many of you know, I've been outspoken about my faith too. People criticize. They say, well, you don't wear your faith on your shirt sleeve. Well, look, my faith is in my heart. I don't know how it's going to stay there. When it's in your heart, it comes out. And I'm not about pushing my faith on anybody. I'm about operating in godly principles that are needed in this government today. Folks, with that said, a lot of things going on in our campaign. We've got 1 week to go before the primaries, 1 week from today, and we want you to get out there and vote. Let's be the grassroots that breaks through. We are on the edge, folks. We've got all kinds of momentum across the state. If we show up in numbers, we will win. Frankly, we won because we showed up, but let's turn out in mass and let's blow everybody's mind. They said it could be done, but we know it can be. They told us to shut up and go away, but we won't. They thought that they could ignore us and we'd go away, but we didn't. We're still here standing, and they are quaking in their shoes with 1 week to go. And we're going to see them look about and look up and go, wow, where did those people come from? And the state of Oklahoma and really the rest of the nation will be saved because you stepped up. Now, with that said, I want to remind you we've got our wonderful app that says this: never bow down to tyrants, defy them. Make sure that you use this app as a guide to know what's coming up. There's several events coming up. This is Sherwood 2022. You can go to our website, sherwood2022.com. But this app has got all of our issues here listed out for you. Statesmen and stateswomen that keep their word list things out for you so they don't have to go back and lie about stuff. It's easy to remember the truth, but it's hard to remember a lie. Remember that. These are here. This is a deal. This is a contract. This is our word put on paper, put electronically for you to see. You'll also see our events coming up, several coming up this week. Tomorrow night, we'll be at a rally in Pryor, Oklahoma at the Pryor Creek Sertoma Club. That'll be tomorrow night at 6:30. That is in northeastern Oklahoma. Thursday, we'll be in far southern Oklahoma, down by the Texas border in Ardmore, at a rally down there, and that one starts at 6:30 as well. Friday, we'll be in southeastern Oklahoma. You talk about spreading out in the town called Wilburton at the Wilburton VFW. Saturday, we'll be in a town called Pickens, Oklahoma. We are finishing this thing with a flurry and a rush, and we're going to finish it strong with our chest out and pop that tape because we're going to go out with a sprint. I'm telling you, folks, we're in it to win it. We're in it to establish freedom across this nation that will never be trampled on and taken away again. And with that said, I want to remind you tonight we'll be also monitoring Facebook Live, where we're at right now. I'll be monitoring the feed here on my phone as well. And make sure that you submit your questions, comments here. I'll be monitoring that during the course of the evening. We've got 2 great, amazing, awesome guests tonight. And without further ado, I want to bring in my first one. I have observed this man. He's an attorney. I've observed this man for the last 2 years step up and challenge the beast, challenge the establishment, challenge the way things were. And he has been tireless, and I mean tireless, in the battle, the frontline battle against medical tyranny. I have watched this man do more, in my observation, in his field than anybody else I've seen in this space in the last 2 years. I got to know him, and I've got to know him better and better, and he's becoming a friend. And I will tell you, what you see is what you get. I see honesty, I see integrity, and I see a tenacity that is based upon a love for people. A love for people that will drive you past the point when you're tired to keep on going. We're all tired. But our guest tonight is going to give us some wisdom, some updates, and some hope. So without further ado, welcome my friend, attorney Thomas Renz. Tom, thanks for joining us, man.
Oh, Mark, you're so kind. And I really appreciate being here. And I appreciate the opportunity to tell people to support you. I mean, honestly, you know, it's an interesting thing. You mentioned being tired, and yeah, I'm tired. We're all tired. I flew in from Florida today. I've landed a few hours ago, and here I am doing this. But it's worth it, and it's what we need to do. So, yeah, for anybody watch, I don't know if everybody knows, but I mean, you know, one of the things about Mark is, yeah, he's one of these guys. He works out. He spends a little bit of time in the gym here and there, right?
A little bit.
And so I'm a lifelong athlete. And when I was a young man, way back in junior high school, I started working out. Still do it now. I've gotten older and fatter. Mark's gotten, just as fit as he ever was. But the thing about it is, I'm still in the gym. I'm still doing my thing. But I remember, you know, back at my peak, I did pretty well. I was a big guy, I was a fit guy. I was a good athlete. And it wasn't because God just anointed me to be born the greatest athlete around. What it was is when everybody else quit, when everybody else went home, when everybody else said, I'm tired, I'm done, I was still trying to find a way to get into the gym. I was breaking into my high school gym so that I could work out. You know, some kids were out causing trouble and doing this and doing that, and I did my share of that probably, but the biggest thing I was trying to do is figure out how to get back to the gym because I needed to get one more step ahead. I had to be better than the next guy. And that's what it takes to win this fight. And as this campaign is coming down, as the primaries are coming up, you know, everybody says to me, the single most common refrain I get everywhere, well, what can I do? Well, guess what? If you're in Oklahoma, Mark Sherwood's going to be on your primary ballot in a few days. Get your butt up and vote and take two people with you. Or, you know, I mean, it's Oklahoma, so I don't know if you'll get away with this. If it was New York, I'd say register as a Democrat and vote 8 times for him. But, you know, no, I'm sorry, it's terrible. But it's time for us to finish what we started here, right? This election season, we've really got an opportunity. You know, I remember going back. Mark, you remember back 2008. This is the most important election of our lifetimes. And the world's going to, well, you know, the thing is it really was. Mm-hmm. But because of the nature of things, because of the nature of the world that we're living in, everyone since then has just gotten more important. And at this point, the heroes in this country, the Mark Sherwoods of this country, the men who have and women who have the courage to stand for something, have now stood. They put their lives on the line. They put their heart on the line. And so you're going to ask me what you can do. You're sitting here looking at a guy that wants to do something. Help him do it. You don't even have to do the work. All you got to do is get some people to go punch a ballot. He's offering to work his tail off for the next however many years. All you got to do is get your butt up and do something. One day, few hours. It's a primary. It doesn't matter. Well, it does matter. The primaries are everything. If you got a rhino on the ballot, it doesn't matter whether it's an R or a D because it's all the same. So there's there's your homework. Everybody's, Renz, what can I do? I'm not an attorney. You can vote. If you were in New York, you'd need to get 10 people to vote with you just to count for one vote, because the other 9 would have been stolen. But that's okay. Anyways, but sorry, I want to tirade here, Mark. Like I said, it's been short sleep, and I've been all wound up.
Well, I appreciate you being here. Little people know, I mean, you were traveling so much, and I've been working, and I actually hosted your show, so we've been really helping each other out. I hosted your show today while you were doing this, and you were so kind to come on here. I'm so grateful, Tom, and I've watched you battle, and I appreciate those kind words, and I will not let those words down, what you said, because there's no one that's going to work harder. And Tom and I understand the athlete frame of mind. I mean, you get up early, you pay the price, not because it's fun some days, but because it's right. And you keep your eye on the prize, your eye on the goal, and you work harder than everybody else because you want it more. And I want to see freedom more. And so does that man, Tom Renz. Now, Tom, you've been fighting against medical tyranny for the last 2 years hard. I have observed you do that. Talk to the listeners who maybe don't know everything you've been doing about what you've been doing for the last 2 years.
Well, I spent about 30% of the time apologizing to guys like you and Sherry Tenpenny and Chris Northrup for how wrong I was about the whole vaccine nightmare. I was a pro-vax guy. I was a skeptic on all this. I just never had been introduced to anything else. Didn't know any better. The lockdowns rolled around, and I was working on a master's in health sciences, and was doing a bunch of epidemiology work and stats work on this new terrible disease that was coming out of China. And it was interesting because everything I found that the news media was reporting was a lie. I know how to do the science. I was taking a master's program at the time. I'm not Bob Malone. I'm not Peter McCullough, but I'm more than capable of understanding what's going on. And when I ran the numbers, they always came up the same. Media's lying. Media's lying. Media's lying. So I found out they were lying, and I started fighting, and that was my red pill moment. And it evolved, and eventually I found out that everything was a lie. Everything in the medical community is I mean, there's so much bad science. There's so much garbage. It's not to say every doctor's bad or every scientist is garbage, but there's just so much of it mixed in. And it's really hard to know what's real and what's not. You really have to dig into this. And, they'll use bad scientific studies that are very well funded and created by brilliant people to justify things that are really unjustifiable. And so I fought to try and get the truth out. I fought to try and make sure that people had information so that they could actually take a stand, so that they actually knew what was going on. I fought for freedom. I fought for freedom from lockdowns, for freedom from mass freedom, for everything. Now I'm trying to make sure that there's freedom and truth related to these jabs that they're trying to kill our babies with. I mean, they're trying to kill babies. Not a single healthy baby has died from COVID-19. Not one. Not one. Now we're going to do these experimental gene therapy jabs on a baby. And I'm sorry, I know that you're running, and so I hope I'm not offending anybody that might vote for you, but I'm just going to tell you, if you're a parent and you're willing to give this jab to your 0 to 5-year-old, you're either an idiot or you're evil. I don't know what else to say about it. Mm-hmm. Because there is no good reason for it. It's sick. It's sick in the head. And listen, this has been out we've been fighting this since it came out. You want to see evidence? Go look at my website. Renz-law.com. There's my shameless plug. Follow us on Truth Social. There's my other shameless plug. But, look, we put the information out there all the time. It's indisputable. It's just, you got to be willing to look at it. If you won't take that time for your baby, then you're really not worth my time. But I still pray for your baby, even if you're that stupid, because no one deserves that. And I actually still pray for you, even if you're that stupid, because I pray that you don't have to deal with the consequences of those actions. So we've been fighting. We're still fighting. And now, Mark, we're just we're fighting this COVID, and one of the things we realized is that COVID, it was a cornerstone. It was a cornerstone in a much bigger plan.
Mm-hmm.
They used COVID as a tool to attack our elections. They used the lockdowns to manipulate people into being willing to accept things they would never normally accept. They're attacking our schools, our kids. They're attacking them with just this stuff that does not belong in schools in any way, shape, or form. They're attacking children. A 12-year-old child, a 6-year-old child cannot make a decision about their gender identity, but you're giving them, you're experimenting on them with permanent medical procedures, things that cause permanent lifelong. There's no repercussions, or I'm sorry, there's no way to repair some of these things. You put a 6-year-old on a hormone, you're screwing that kid up for life.
Yep.
And yet we're doing this. We're experimenting on our kids because it makes us feel good. Because it's, so we're under attack there. They're attacking our energy sector, our food supply. All these things are under attack. Inflation. Anybody feel up lately? Everywhere we look, all this is being done by the same people. And that's the real key here. When I dug into COVID, when I got past Anthony Fauci's a crook, which he is, when I realized, though, that if he's a crook, someone had to be buying him off, that's when everything really started opening. So now we're going to fight COVID and the jabs and everything about it until we're free and until the entire truth comes out. But we're not going to stop until we've actually freed our world from this evil that permeates it and that's attacking us in every way, shape, or form.
Well, Tom, I will echo what you said. And interestingly enough, folks, you need to understand that every single state, with the exception of one, the state of Florida, has already ordered a COVID shot supply for those little babies from 6 months up to 5. It is crazy. It's insane. And parents, hear my heart. Do not allow that to happen to your child. There's no reason, no medical reason whatsoever. So let that one go and stand up against tyranny. And if your doctor is pushing that, find a new doctor, because doctors are not dictators. Doctors work for you. Remember that. That's a very important point. Tom, as you have battled this thing, and you have, man, you've been out there tirelessly on many, many broadcasts, your own show, on many platforms. Are we making a dent, Tom?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. You got to understand that, the guys behind this have decades of planning. We've got paperwork showing that. The guys behind this have trillions of dollars that they control or manipulate. These guys are the leaders of the world. And, this was a very well thought out plan that, has just really been executed very well. When I started out, I started fighting this day one. I couldn't get another attorney or doctor to return a phone call for me anywhere in this country. I finally found one other attorney that was willing to fight. There were two at the time. We started fighting and fighting and fighting, and nobody believed anything we were saying. But we fought and we fought and we fought. And I remember some of the biggest names in this movement. I remember when I first met them, and they came in, and some of these doctors who are huge names, and they're like, well, maybe the science is a little off, but these are all well-meaning guys. They just they made some mistakes here, and then 6 months later, I run into them. They're like, oh my God, you were right. These guys are crooks. And it's like you hear them change and you hear them evolve, and I understand that because it took me some time to believe this. It's such a massive, massive thing. But we've made great progress. I mean, it's very mainstream. The CDC claims that 70% of Americans are jabbed. I think that the real number is closer to 50. I can't find anything to support that 70%. But even if it's 70%, that's a huge victory. They wanted 90 to 95%. So I've talked a little bit about this lately. One of the things that I firmly believe, the bad guys needed to get to 90 to 95% jab to hold us off. And the reason for that is that at 70%, that means 3 out of 10 people aren't jabbed. If it's 50%, that means 5 out of 10. So that means, you pick any 10, 3 of them haven't been. Now, so those 3 also, they've had to stand strong. And for those of you that have made it this long and haven't taken even one jab, you've been attacked. You've been vilified. You've been crucified. It's been rough. So guess what? Now, as we see people dying right and left, they've got a new name for it, SADS, sudden adult death syndrome, because there's so many young people dying that they can't, we can't say it's the jab, but there's 17-year-old dying in their sleep. What do you mean? That's a normal thing, I guess? But, they have to invent a new disease? Well, see, that's what the plan was. We've got the evidence. We know what they were going to do. The plan was, if you get 9 out of 10 people, well, you can convince everybody that the side effects of this jab are just some new disease that's popped up, and it's really another massive health problem, and we got to triple down on all this. But by keeping it that low, by working so hard, and by getting it down, by you being out there, Mark, by all of us who've been out there fighting this, we've kept the numbers low enough that now people see there's a control group. My kids, I don't know any 17-year-olds that are dying that haven't been jabbed. It doesn't happen, right? So we've been incredibly successful. This thing will fail. It's a matter of time. Now, the other thing, though, is we've been successful elsewhere. Remember, there's been victories all over the place, not just by me, but by a lot of attorneys who who weren't even in existence when I started. Remember? So when we started, there was nobody. I started day one. Now there's hundreds of attorneys around the country fighting this, and they're getting victories, some big, some small, and it's wonderful. So these guys are, they're fighting, they're standing, they're making an impact, and it's great. On a personal level, yeah, I've had success. I've had a fair bit. We've defended a lot of doctors. We've defended a lot of people who, people in their jobs. I can't say getting people out of the hospital who they were murdering, that has not been a high win percentage, but I'll tell you, it feels pretty good when you get one. Yeah. Because one life saved is about as much as you could ask for. And we have had some of those. So we've had wins here and there all over the place. Now, we can't, one thing people always forget about is, well, tell us about your wins. Well, listen, if you're a private citizen and you come to me and you need help because your job's being threatened or because your, medical license is under attack, the first thing that we do is we define what you want to happen, right? Because a win is based on what you want, not what I want. So, I want these charges to go away and I want to keep practicing medicine. Okay, let's see what we can do. We've had a few of those where the charges have gone away wonderfully, and we've been able to get that taken care of real well. And those have been huge wins for some great people. But does that mean that you then want me to go out and broadcast it to the world? Well, no, because you've already had enough trouble. So we can't always talk about the wins. We're also making progress on the big cases that everybody's heard about. They're all moving. We argued before the Sixth Circuit here a week or so ago, a couple weeks ago. I don't know. It all runs together. We've got a case, probably 2, that'll end up at the Supreme Court. We're getting ready to file a request for cert sometime this summer. But this stuff takes time. These are big, complicated things. The U.S. Supreme Court is for any issues that you may think it has, it's a big deal to be involved with them. And, we're going to ask them from a place of humility, please allow us to help promote justice. Allow us to help educate you so that you can do your job, because that's the job of an attorney, is to help educate a judge on the issues related to a case, and then allow that judge to reach a good conclusion. So we're doing good things all over the place, and I'm very pleased with the progress we're making. I think we're going to win the COVID battle. Mm-hmm. But like I said, that's a battle. The war is the war against freedom. And boy, there's a lot more coming, Mark. We got to get guys like you in the governor mansions and in some of these other key places so that we can do it.
Yeah, you're right, Tom. We're in a war, and these battles, COVID, indoctrination, CCP owning land, it's over and over again. And it just goes to show you that we're all in this war, fighting different battles, doing our job. And I absolutely commend you for that. Tom, is we're winding up on our time here, but nonetheless, I want to know, I want you to give one more non-shameless plug. How can people reach you again? How your website with the information? Because I want people to have that. We're going to put that in the feed. And folks, I want to encourage you to share the feed that we have going. A bunch of you are watching right now. Make sure you hit the share button and give people this information. Information like this is memorialized forever. That's the beauty of this, right? Share it. Share it because you care. So make sure you do that. That's a big deal. And give my friend Tom a bunch of hearts on there too, because I love this guy. He's a soft-spoken big guy, but boy, he's got a heart of gold, and he's a warrior in there. So Thomas, where can people reach you? And then, man, give us your best 2 or 3 minute, here's what's coming, here's what's going to happen, and motivate us, man.
Okay, so renz-law.com, renz-law.com. There's a link to Give, Send, Go there. There's a link to our Truth Social there. We're on Cloud Hub. We're on Getter. I actually got a Twitter account, not that I use. I keep trying to get banned, and they won't ban me. I don't understand it. I've been trying. I've got a Facebook account, but I almost never log into it. I haven't logged into that for months, so I don't. You can share just to annoy Facebook, although I haven't sued them yet. So I don't know. It's on the list. So let me tell you, we have some very big things coming. I am working right now on trying to finalize what I think will be a massive, massive impact lawsuit. Might be one of the biggest things we've done yet. I think it'll have a lot of impact. I think it has the potential to really change the direction of things and to really shed truth on all of this. In my world, it's crazy because you don't know until you actually hit file if it's going to work out, because you keep finding new things right till the last minute. It's a very, very high stress, just push type thing. But we keep pushing till the last minute. And, sometimes you push that last minute and it doesn't work out. Sometimes it does. I think this one's going to work out, so I'm very excited for that. I'm hoping to be able to announce it. We're working with some new partners on some different things. It's interesting. There's some really interesting things happening on the election side of things. Now, I can't show my cards on that, but I'm dropping you a little hint there. We're fighting the fight, Mark. We're fighting the fight, and listen, I cannot urge the people watching this enough. Help get this guy elected, okay? This is a good man. He's a God-fearing man. Oklahoma needs this. We need another Ron DeSantis type guy who will stand up and say no. Wouldn't it be cool for Oklahoma to have another, like a Ron DeSantis type? How awesome would that be? Yeah. You have an opportunity, because Mark's going to do that. He's going to stand up. He's going to say, I'm sorry, this is what's right. This is what's wrong. This is what I stand by. You got an opportunity, but you guys got to take it. So God bless you, Mark, and thank you for having me.
Tom, thanks for being on. I honor you. Make sure folks should go to renz-law.com. We'll put that in the feed and share this information everywhere. Tom, from the bottom of my heart, I want to thank you, first of all, for being my friend. Friendships are hard to come by, but I've learned when you're in a foxhole, when you're in a war, you really find out who's in there with you and who doesn't stay there. So you've been there. And
well, it's an honor, Mark. I wouldn't have been able to fight this long, this hard, without standing next to some real heroes. I stand on the shoulder of giants, and I appreciate all that you do.
Well, thanks, man. And hey, if we can ever do anything for you, we're in the same team, and we're in this together, and we will win because we said yes to the call that God put in our lives, and He's equipping us every bit of the way. So, Tom, from the bottom of my heart, and my wife, who's obviously with me in my heart, thank you so much, and we can't wait to see you again whenever we do. I believe probably Virginia Beach or so coming up soon, right? Something like that. You heading down that way?
Oh yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to. I'd love to get down to Oklahoma. I've had a heck of a time scheduling it, but I'd love to get down there, and I don't think it'll happen before the primary. But maybe I can get down there afterwards and help campaign in the general election.
Boy, that would be amazing, and we would appreciate you. That knowledge you bring is nothing short of amazing, and we appreciate you battling the front lines. You put everything on the line to be on the front lines, and that's a courageous stand. So thank you, my friend, and stand strong. Godspeed to you as well, and we'll look forward to seeing you in person very, very soon.
Thank you, sir.
Well, folks, there you have it. Attorney Tom Renz. What a hero. What a man. What a guy. Just incredibly amazing with what he does and what he stands for. I have watched him battle this idea of, this medical tyranny thing for a long, long time. And we need to understand that we are not in this fight alone. There's people like Tom Renz out there, and we're waiting on KrisAnne Hall or other guests to get in as well. And obviously, they're out there battling alone. And, when we talk about Tom Renz' idea of what he's doing, folks, there are people that have lost their jobs right here in Oklahoma. 150,000 people over the last 2 years have lost their jobs in the state of Oklahoma. Are you hearing me? We have had people having their businesses closed that never were going to reopen again in the state of Oklahoma because of these ridiculous mask vaccine mandates that should never happen. We're still dealing with it in many businesses in Oklahoma and even the Oklahoma National Guard because we've got no one that's willing to step up and say no. Folks, hear me, I will say no. Under our administration, we would have never had one lockdown. We would have never had one mandate. It wouldn't have happened because it's not constitutional. Please hear my heart with that. It's not constitutional. And anybody that goes into office should understand that a prerequisite for being in office should be to know the United States Constitution. And I find that appalling that we have. And today, I still deal with this a lot. People calling us to say, can you do anything about these mandates? We have written hundreds and hundreds of religious and even a few medical exemption waivers. And believe it or not, we've been very successful. But my question is, why in the world are we continuing to have to do that? Understand, too, that over the course of the last couple of years, we have had a pattern of blending in and sort of becoming part of the culture. As I stated just a few moments ago, and I want to repeat it one more time because I want you to really catch the full effect of this. You heard Tom Renz talk about no healthy baby has died from COVID. Yet, there's a vaccine. Why do you need to have a vaccine for something that didn't kill anything? Folks, think. Please think. Don't listen to the white coat as God. They don't have a higher place in heaven, contrary to some's belief. Listen carefully to reason within. Listen to the heart within. Listen to what's inside of you. Do we understand that children should not be victimized by these vaccines? Are we really going to risk one child be permanently injured by a vaccine that's completely unnecessary, that's driven by apparently profit? All profit. Folks, do we understand that we're in a time where hard decisions have to be made? In perilous times, courageous people rise. And I want you to hear me, parents. Seriously, Oklahoma has already ordered the COVID-19 shots for infants to 5-year-olds. The only state that didn't do that was the state of Florida. You heard Thomas Renz talking about Ron DeSantis. I admire that man. I think he's done a really good job. But I will tell you, I don't compare myself after him one bit. I compare myself to the best I can do to honor my Lord in heaven, period. End of story. But I do know myself. I know my history. My wife knows my history and knows myself very well. We will stand up. And we'll make we'll make you very proud to be your next governor of the state of Oklahoma. You will look back on this and you'll say, man, I wish the other governors could be like that too. I wish they could be like that Governor Mark Sherwood and First Lady Michelle. I wish they could be like that. But our mission is not to bring attention to ourselves, friends. Our mission is to encourage people like Governor DeSantis to push even harder back against tyranny. Our mission is to encourage other governors around this country to push back. Our mission is to encourage other Tom Renz around this country to use their skills to push back. Our mission is to encourage every willing, able-bodied patriot to push back. We're called to rally the troops. But there are people that have to lead the way, and we're willing to do that. And I was thinking back many times, and I have, the times I was on the SWAT team carrying that shield, going in the door first. And I did many times. And you wonder if the bullets are going to come through the shield, but you don't think about that. You're just trying to keep going forward. And you're hoping to God that the people behind you are going forward as well. But folks, I'm confident in this. The people of Oklahoma, as I've looked you in the eye, and my wife has looked you in the eye, and we spent time with you. We put this hand in your hand. We spent time looking into your soul. Folks, I will tell you, I see the heart of lions and lionesses in the state of Oklahoma that are not willing to back down to anything. So as far as my wife and I go, we consider ourselves extremely fortunate to have the opportunity to stand with you. I didn't say in front of you. We're willing to stand with you. Yeah, we'll go in the door front, but we know you're with us. I have full confidence. And we will be the best governor that this state has ever seen. And I can say that because we are not comparing it to anything. I'm sick and tired of the top 10 state comments, knowing we are almost number 50 in health, or 47 or 48 in education. Folks, that's pathetic. And yet, we're going to go ahead and bring vaccines in and maybe kill a few more babies, just like we do with abortion, where we've got 300 plus bills that say they're going to end it, and they never have. You're hearing politicians right now talk that we have, by the way, folks. Let me just look you right in the eye and tell you that's a lie. These bills do not do that. There's one House bill that provides civil remedies for those that are offended, basically for people that perform abortions, but the woman is isolated from that. You also see Senate Bill 612 that has been purported to ban abortions. It did not ban abortion. It's a lie. And I'm sick and tired of watching politicians lie. Folks, I'm not going to lie to you. I'm going to tell you the truth. And ultimately, we will live with the truth. If we mess up on something, I'm going to be the first one to say, man, I really messed that one up, and I'm going to ask for your forgiveness and going to repent and do it again right. And when I look at what's happening in our world, we need to have more politicians that are willing to say, I'm sorry, please forgive me. We need to have more politicians that are willing to step up and own it. Now, folks, I want you to know, our next guest owns it. I've watched her speak. I watched her speak at Fairview Baptist Church in Edmond. First time I'd heard her speak. And I was blown away. This person owns history, owns the Constitution, understands the idea of this 10th Amendment. And as many of you know, Sheriff Richard Max became an amazing personal friend. He blew me away at the same event when he said, if we win this election, I'm moving to Oklahoma. You know what? I'm looking forward to him moving to Oklahoma because we're gonna win. We're gonna be the first grassroots candidates at taking it from nothing and bring this grassroots movement to the top. We're gonna protect Oklahoma. We're gonna get back our freedom, and we're gonna do it from a local and state level the right way, the way the Constitution says so. Without further ado, It gives me great honor and pleasure to introduce our next guest for our virtual town hall, attorney KrisAnne Hall. KrisAnne, thanks for joining us tonight. We're so grateful.
Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here.
Oh my gosh, when I heard you speak, I was like, man, I don't know if she's a preacher or a teacher or what, and I think it's all inclusive. But look, you said something there. You talked about Shy Reeves, and people were like, what? You know, and I've heard that before. But KrisAnne, you know, people that maybe don't know who you are, and I can't imagine who that would be, kind of give some of our listeners some of your background.
Well, I'm a constitutional attorney, but I didn't start off that way. I actually was for probably 29 years of my life. Well, less than that, maybe. I wouldn't count the childhood years, you know, but until I was about 29, a hardcore socialist and an atheist. And I, through a series of events and realizations, came to understand about God. I came to understand about Christ. I came to understand about my rights. And in law school, I discovered the Constitution. Now, what's interesting is that it wasn't law school that showed me the Constitution. It was actually a realization from some other readings that I had been doing some historical readings and the readings of those who wrote the Constitution. So I actually read what the writers of the Constitution wrote. And I came to understand that what I was learning in law school about the Constitution was absolutely false. And so it upset me. It sort of triggered the little inner rebellion in me. And I just started consuming all this information about the Constitution, not from the textbooks, not from the professors, but from the people who actually wrote the Constitution and the books they wrote about the Constitution, because that's really the only accurate way to understand the true application of the Constitution, which is probably why they don't teach it that way, you know, in schools. And I'm talking K through law school too. So I got my undergraduate degree in biochemistry. I joined the military. I was a Russian linguist for the U.S. Army. And then when I broke my hip in the Army and had to get out, and I went to law school. And that's where what I do today really sort of came together and culminated into what I am.
When I heard you speak, you know, and I knew a lot, probably more than most, about the Constitution, and spending time with your colleague, Sheriff Mack, you know, I really had a lot of discussions about the 10th Amendment and the idea of state sovereignty and states' rights and the powers and the rights retained at the state level and with the people and all of that. You know, and you have a very eloquent way of explaining that. And that has not been honored today. It's flipped. It's like the federal government's being so much power, and it was never intended that way. Explain the importance about the 10th Amendment and why that's significant to actually regain the idea of our republic.
Well, one of the 6 books that I've written on American history and the Constitution teaches this all in great detail. That book is called Sovereign Duty, and that's really what the whole book is about. It's about the formation of the Constitution and how it operates as a contract and the separation of power between the states and the federal government that creates the greatest check and balance on government authority. And so what we have to understand is that, you know, you said we're not teaching this and people don't understand this. Well, we haven't been teaching this proper separation of power between the states and the federal government since 1833. And in 1833, in a politically motivated, deliberate effort, our training on the Constitution was replaced by a textbook written by a then Supreme Court Justice by the name of Joseph Story. And Joseph Story was what I have come to call a federal supremacist. And so he advocated and was in the camp with the people like Daniel Webster, and even to an extent, Alexander Hamilton, that the federal government was to be a supreme and superior authority to the states. And they had to, in order to achieve that, they had to start teaching from the ground up a brand new ulterior doctrine about the Constitution. And like I said, it was completely politically motivated. It came out of history. It came out of political crisis, and it was absolutely deliberate. And that's how you get opinions by the Supreme Court, and you get professors and pundits and politicians who say that the Supremacy Clause declares that the federal government and federal laws are supreme, are superior to state governments and state laws. That's absolutely not what the Supremacy Clause says. And anybody with a pocket constitution, anybody with an internet access, anybody with a smartphone can look up Article 6, Clause 2 of the Constitution, which is the Supremacy Clause, and read it and discover that it doesn't declare the federal government supreme. It declares the Constitution supreme, and the federal government and everything else is inferior, is subordinate to that. And in that, the federal laws, it says, that are made in pursuance to the Constitution are the supreme law of the land, and the states are bound by them. But federal laws, and now rules and regulations and executive orders that are outside the Constitution and or contrary to the Constitution by Article 6, Clause 2 are not the supreme law of the land, and the states are not bound by them. And this is not, radical. This is not conspiracy theory stuff. This is stuff even the Supreme Court does understand on a certain level. It pops out in their opinions every now and again, but they don't like to openly adopt it because then that robs them of their own authority, of their own power. And so, for example, people remember the Supreme Court opinion written by Justice Roberts about the Affordable Care Act, NFIB v. Sebelius, right? Well, inside that, Roberts, who is the Chief Justice, wrote that in the typical case that the Supreme Court and the federal government look to the states to not comply with federal rules and regulations when they do not want to adopt them as their own. And Roberts concluded that by saying, because our states are independent, sovereign governments, and they have to act like it. And so that's how I knew. When I read that opinion that day, I was sitting at I remember that day. I was sitting at the kitchen table and I was like, what? And so it was just, amazing validation for what I have come to understand from Alexander Hamilton, from James Madison, from James Wilson, that the federal government is only superior when it complies with the Constitution.
Let me ask you this, KrisAnne, because I carry around my pocket Constitution when I'm out on the campaign trail, and sometimes I hold it up, I'll go through some of the amendments, 1, 2, 4, 10, et cetera. And then I go eventually to Article 1, Section 8, where the congressional powers are laid out.
Right.
And when I say to people, there's 18, not 185 or 1,800.
Right.
People's eyes get big because the picture that's been painted in society, KrisAnne, is that the federal government's got all these duties and all these powers that we're depend on them to save us.
Right.
Talk about that.
Well, to get an indication of how misled the people are, you talk about Congress, Article 1, Section 8. I have heard, especially during presidential elections, right? I have heard Fox News experts and reporters, or whatever they call themselves today. I've heard them from CNN, from Fox News, from Newsmax, and the most conservative outlets say things like, well, the president is authorized a vast number of powers and has a great deal of autonomy in the exercise of his office. Well, that is an absolute abject lie. And it's a very simple lie to prove, because all you have to do is read Article 2 of the Constitution, which has the power delegated to the president. It's very, very little power, especially compared to Congress. And the president only has autonomy in pardoning people from federal crimes, pardoning or free from federal crimes, or to call Congress into session and issue a State of the Union address. Everything else the president does as an authorized power must be done with the approval of the Senate or approval of the House and the Senate. Zero autonomy on everything else. And that's what we have to understand. And like you said, the very few listed authorities of Congress, specifically enumerated, specifically delegated, Alexander Hamel wrote in Federalist, it's 83 or 84, I can't remember which one right now, that a specific delegation of power would be absurd if we intended a general authority to be applied. So basically what our founders are telling us is that, not just simply our founders, those who actually wrote and ratified the Constitution, that why in the world would we go through the debate, through the toil, the drama, the expense of specifically listing the powers that Congress can do? Because our list would be useless if we just meant, you can do whatever is necessary and proper, or you can do whatever falls under the general welfare clause.
That's beautiful. And I want to encourage you folks that are listening tonight on our feed, share this. This is like, there's a bunch of folks listening right now. Share this thing, right? Because this is information you're not going to hear anywhere else. I've been so impressed with KrisAnne Hall, and as me, KrisAnne, being a former police officer for 24 years before becoming a naturopath, I'm inherently very skeptical of everybody, and that's probably a good thing, right? But
yeah, absolutely.
And I saw the real deal, there, and I was so impressed. I've been so excited about tonight. I want to get into two hot issues, and these are hot, and I know what your answers are going to be, but coming from you, it's going to be much more eloquent and much more constitutional language than myself. But let's get into the issue of the talk is, I'm just going to paint the scenario and then you just respond to it. Oh my goodness, Biden is going to give up our medical sovereignty to an organization called the World Health Organization. And they're going to be able to come in here, they're going to come into the States, they're going to be able to do anything they want in the U.S., and their supremacy will reign. We can't stop them. Respond.
Well, I have a podcast as well, and I have covered this on my podcast. My website, KrisAnneHall.com, I have a very detailed article about this as well. And the answer to that question is just very simply, Biden doesn't have the authority to give away our sovereignty. He doesn't have that authority, and the only way that will happen is if we comply. And really, in all honesty, the real solution to that scenario is for governors to stand up and say, I'm sorry, we're not going to allow you to enforce that here. We are not going to allow the World Health Organization to come into our state and enforce anything at all. And then, as you well know, it's your sheriff then that comes in on, at the end and puts the exclamation point on the end of that. Now, I actually have an online training program called LibertyFirstSociety.com, where we teach all of these things. You see, the understanding that Biden doesn't have this authority is found in the Constitution's delegation of power regarding treaties. And presidents do not have autonomous treaty power. There is no such thing as a presidential deal. There is no such thing as an accord. The only thing that's legally binding in the United States is a treaty, And a treaty is only binding under two conditions. And these two conditions are outlined within the Constitution. So condition number one, every treaty negotiated by the president must be approved by 2/3 of the Senate. Not the House of Representatives. The House isn't involved in this, just 2/3 of the Senate. That's condition number one. Condition number two is every treaty that is approved by 2/3 of the Senate must comply with the authority delegated to the federal government through the Constitution. And that's very relevant, especially in this situation, because number one, the Senate has not approved this World Health Organization treaty. And even if it did, and I'll just throw that out because there's a lot of misinformation out there about, whether it's been approved or not, way back in Truman or whatever. Even if it was, it is still an invalid treaty according to Article 6, Clause 2, because we never delegated power to the federal government to control our health care.
That's perfect, because I made a big old statement about this. It went about 10 minutes long, and people thought I'd lost my ever-loving mind, but I was addressing Dr. Tedros by name and saying, you're not welcome. Under our administration, you can stay over there.
Right.
If you come knocking at the border of the state of Oklahoma, I'm going to say, who do you think you are?
Right.
And literally. So, I think people need to understand that all that conjecture, all that worry, all that burden is irrelevant to the states. It only becomes relevant when you have an incompetent, unconstitutional, or non-constitutional following governor and don't do their job. And so
exactly.
we won't do that, obviously. And I do think I want to make sure we plug their website, KrisAnne.com, and then Liberty First Society. That's an excellent training. Look, if I'm elected governor, I would love to see if we could figure out how to do it, that training could be for our cabinet members. Because
absolutely.
It's critical, because you can't run a state effectively or even serve the people, I don't believe, until you know this type of information. Right?
Well, here's the thing. Everybody in government takes an oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of your state, right? And if you don't understand the Constitution's application, and you don't understand your state constitution's application and how those two documents actually work together, they don't contradict, they complement and work with each other together for the security of the individual rights of the people. If you don't understand that, there is no way you're going to be able to keep your promise in your oath to support and defend the Constitution. Because here's the key, and you know this, so I'm not telling anybody anything, that they probably haven't heard from you already. If a law, if a executive order, if a regulation, whether it be state or federal, is inconsistent and incompatible with the constitutions, then there is a duty to not enforce it. There's a duty to protect the people from its enforcement. We have a whole movie on it, a whole documentary on this principle called Non-Compliant. And you can watch this movie at noncompliantmovie.com.
Noncompliantmovie.com. We're going to make sure we post these links within the feed because it's super important. All right, I'm going to come at you with another one. This has been in the news lately too. And I did like 22 interviews in one day. I think I said it all on this one. The issue of gun violence in America is front and center with Uvalde and many more, even right down the street from our office in Tulsa, Oklahoma, a couple weeks back. Congress and all this rhetoric going on within the news about them coming together, coming up with this gun legislation, compromise or not, and President Biden said we're going to get it done. A lot of news about a lot of stuff. If they come up with some kind of package, that says we're going to do this, do the states have to follow that?
Absolutely not. They do not. As a matter of fact, the states have a duty to refuse to comply. And that's, once again, grounded in solid principles within the Constitution of your state and the Constitution of the United States. Remember, Article 6, Clause 2 says if what the government is doing, the federal government is doing, is not consistent with the Constitution, then the states are not bound by it, right? And that, I mean, that's actually what it says. So when you take into account gun regulation, the federal government is not authorized constitutionally, is delegated zero authority to regulate the sale, the purchase, the carry, the possession of firearms within your state. Simply not authorized. Now, compound that with the fact that the Second Amendment says they are not allowed to, shall not infringe on the right to keep and bear arms. So you have a twice security in the Constitution with the right to keep and bear arms. First, you have a deliberate non-delegation of authority, and then you have an explicit denial of authority.
I love how you put that. I've said it probably less eloquent and said they're wasting their time, a bunch of discussion, a bunch of money to do a bunch of nothing that matters nothing to the states in these United States. And so the issue, I hear these politicians, and I'll use that word intentionally, that are running for federal office, even in my state, make all these promises about all these bills they're going to author and co-author and co-sponsor and blah, blah, blah about what they're going to do. But then I look at the middle of the pocket Constitution, and I'm like, okay, I don't see one of those powers that you're just talking about, you're saying you're going to do in Article 1, Section 8, anywhere.
Right.
And I'm thinking to myself, do people not know any different? And I don't guess they do, right, KrisAnne?
Well, it's not only that they don't know any different, it's because they've been actually taught the wrong things. Remember, we traded all the textbooks out in 1833 and started teaching doctrinal error when it comes to applying the Constitution. And so our government-controlled curriculum has trained up people since 1833 to deny the authority of the state as a check and balance, and to believe that the federal government has, hidden, secret, in the shadows, plenary authority, that all they have to do is invent or authorize or justify based on something they think is necessary. But William Pitt the Younger wrote in 1784, I think, that necessity is the plea for every infringement of human freedom. It is the argument of tyrants, and it is the creed of slaves.
Wow. Say that one more time. I want to digest that.
Yeah, so the federal government is constantly expanding its authority on under their cry of necessity. But William Pitt the Younger said and wrote that necessity is the plea for every infringement of human freedom, and this is back in the 1700s. Necessity is the plea for every infringement of human freedoms. It is the argument of tyrants, and it is the creed of slaves.
And I'm drawn to these televised arguments about the need. We got to do something. It's a need to change things. It's a need. That word, you need, you have to do something. That's exactly what you're saying that's played out today is modern day television.
And they classify themselves as tyrants or slaves.
Well, KrisAnne, let me ask you this. I think you know me a little bit. I know you know me through Sheriff Mack somewhat. Our platform here has been strong 10th Amendment. It's been, we have got to get this idea of government back to the people, like with the proper division, the proper separation, the proper checks and balances, all this stuff, where we the people become the voice, where tyranny is not allowed to stand, where the people have a duty, a necessity to step up against that if they face it. Right.
Right.
How, and I look at it like, and you can correct me if I'm wrong because you're the expert, the governors and the sheriffs, in my observation, seem to be the most important critical positions to this concept.
Mm-hmm.
The very, I guess, salvaging of this republic in which we stand.
Right.
Talk about that, and am I right about that? Am I just
Yes.
observation?
No, you're absolutely right, and it's by design. By design, the state and local governments were created before the U.S. Constitution created the federal government, and the states created the Constitution, which created the federal government to reserve to the states the majority of power. They established within the Constitution avenues of checks and balances on the federal government by and through the states. It's an amazing design. It's like I said, my book, Moral Duty, outlines all of that. It's absolutely incredible, the brilliant design that they did. They did not create a union of states in which we lost sovereignty and we became this, this consolidation of governments. What we did was we created a union of states that retained their independent sovereignty so that they could be the governor over this federal government. One of the simple things that really would help us understand this, if we just taught in our schools the relationship between the federal government and the states by creation. The federal government was not created to be a governor over the states. The federal government was created to be an ambassador on behalf of the states in foreign affairs. The majority of the power, the overwhelming majority of the power to the federal government is foreign affairs. As a matter of fact, James Madison explains it this way in Federalist 45. He says, the powers delegated by the proposed Constitution to the federal government are few and defined. Those that remain in the state governments are numerous and indefinite. He said the powers that are delegated to the federal government are to be exercised principally on foreign affairs, war, peace, negotiation, and foreign commerce, not internal, foreign commerce. He said everything else, the ordinary course of affairs that concerns the lives, the liberties, the properties of the people, the internal order, improvement, and prosperity of the state are all reserved to the states. And in that reservation of power, that word reserved means to exercise dominion over something to the exclusion of all others. And in that reservation of power creates a duty for the governor, a duty for the sheriff to refuse the authority and the jurisdiction of the federal government when they're not operating within the confines of delegated constitutional authority.
Well said. I'm going to, we're running out of time here, and I'm going to flip it around to you. When we have, like we have, weak governors, weak sheriffs, what happens, KrisAnne, to our states and to our country?
Well, when we have weak governors and weak sheriffs, we cease being states and we become colonies. We become colonies of a Washington, D.C. federal kingdom, where orders come down from Washington, D.C. over the governors. The governors just become agents of the federal government and doing their bidding like courtiers or members of the king's court. And in that comes the destruction of the rights of the people. Because when you live in a colony, you have no rights. You only have privileges. And when you live in a colony, you really have no defense of your rights. You are subject to the sword and the command of the king. And it's, we talk about independence. We're coming up on Independence Day, about, we're independent from Great Britain and go founding fathers. But what we don't realize is that not only did they declare independence from Great Britain, but with the creation of our state governments and the creation of a limited and defined federal government, they also declared independence from kings forever. And our governors aren't kings either, because the state constitutions quite greatly limit the power of the governor and create separation of power between the legislative, executive, and judicial branches, so you don't get a governor as a king. So if you have a governor that's issuing orders that you have to close your business, or that you have to stay home, or you have to wear a mask, or you have to have something injected in your body, or you can't put something in your body, then you have a governor that has actually become a king. And the governor's orders are null and void. And that's when the sheriff comes in, and the sheriff's duty to refuse to enforce those orders.
Love it. Love it. That is so good, KrisAnne. Look, I've got a couple of closing remarks to give, but don't sign off just yet.
No, sir.
KrisAnne, before we get out of here, I just appreciate you. I look forward to growing our relationship together. I look forward to growing the community of education on true constitutional principles, the way the Federalist Papers indicate. And I love how you quoted Federalist 45. That's one of my favorites. Well done. With that said, maybe 1 minute just for the good. Give the people some hope, man. Some hope, because give them some hope.
Well, I've never been more encouraged about the future of America, to be honest with you, because it is only out of blatant oppression that revival can spring. And that's what's happening. The people are really being stuck in their pocketbooks and really beginning to realize that this government is doing things that it's not supposed to do, trampling our rights, destroying our economy, ruining our lives. And the federal government and even our state governments were never delegated the level of authority to achieve those goals. And so we have people, oh my goodness, all over America asking for the education that we give at libertyfirstsociety.com online, if they can't wait for me to come and teach them personally. And we do come and do things personally. We do interviews like this. I've been doing this for 12 years. I have been traveling and teaching for 12 years. For 7 of those years, I taught 260 classes in over 22 states every year. I mean, we spent more time on airplanes and in hotels than we did at home. And now I am going back to some of those places, and I'm teaching the children of the children that I taught 12 years ago. And it's amazing to me, generations, new generations. And so I just want to encourage people, you're not alone. We can do this. This is not impossible. The ballot box is not the only place you have control. You have enormous control, but you must get educated and get activated in the proper solutions. And like I said before, my book, Sovereign Duty, is just a really great resource. Not only do I teach all of this, at the back of the book, Mark, there's over 185 citations where I give you my research. I mean, I give it to you, all of it, because I want to prove to you, I want to show you that I'm not making this up. And none of my research comes from what other people write about other things, right? Everything in my book, all the teaching is from what we take back to original source material. And so you can be guaranteed that I'm not teaching opinions unless those opinions are of those who actually live the history, right? Not my own. We have Liberty First Society online training. We train students. We have hundreds of homeschool students. We even have law school groups using the same curriculum. So Liberty First Society is so simple that a middle schooler learns from it, but so deep and so well thought out that even the most serious scholar will learn. And that's what we put together with libertyfirstsociety.com. And don't forget, our movie, Non-Compliant, that's just 82 minutes. It's just so wonderful. And those aren't my words. Those are the over, tens of thousands of reviews that we're getting at noncompliantmovie.com.
Well, folks, there you go. KrisAnne, I think as I sat there and watched you mesmerize the crowd for like a few hours there at Fairview Baptist Church in Edmond, I know our audience has been mesmerized as well. So,
well,
folks,
thank you.
there you have it. KrisAnne, this has been an amazing town hall. A lot of information, mind-blowing, no question. But, folks, the ballot box is a place to make some difference. We've got 1 week now before the primary. 1 week.
Absolutely.
So the 28th is it, KrisAnne. So encourage people to vote, will you?
Absolutely. The primaries are so important because in the primaries, you really have an individual choice. And you should always, in a primary, vote for a candidate that is constitutionally sound, not based on party politics, not based on party affiliation, but a candidate that can prove to you that they are both sound on the U.S. Constitution and sound on the state constitution, because that will be the promise that they make to you.
Well said. Well, I appreciate you, KrisAnne, for coming on tonight. I'm so blessed to know you, and just really, folks, share this video, share it everywhere. Give KrisAnne like hundreds of hearts right now. However you do that, right? Push the button until Facebook tells you to stop, right? So make sure you do that. And folks, I want to tell you out there, I don't want to see Oklahoma become a colony, right? I love that phrase.
Right. Right.
Change it, and it starts right now with understanding the heart of the founding fathers that was given to them by God himself.
Right.
So I'm grateful for you, grateful for KrisAnne, grateful for all of you. My wife and I are so treasured and blessed to know you. So I pray God's blessing over you. I pray that all of this information will be infused into not just your brain, but in your heart.
Yeah.
Take it forward, let it get some legs, and let it become part of who you are.
Thank you. My dog is trying to get in the picture.
Hi, puppy. Folks, we love you. And
thank you.
Yeah, thank you, KrisAnne. Folks, God bless you all, and I hope you've had a great time tonight. May God pour out his blessings on you mightily. We'll look forward to seeing you on the road, round trip, all over this state. We've got a week left, and I pray that you will be experiencing true knowledge tonight that will set you free, will give you freedom.
Amen.
So with that said, I pray, God's blessings on you. May God bless these United States of America. Good night.
Thank you very much. Good night.
We have up is down, left is right, bad is good, confusion. And God is through confusion.
God wants to bless America, but it starts with his people first, repenting and the ending of sin.
We have been in ministry the last 20 years. It was in prayer that the Lord would convict me to run for office. And so I'm excited about